seconds.
Is this where the damn drumming and the music kicks in?
Yeah. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me. Welcome to On the Pipe Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tyler Shepherdson, and today is Thursday, July the 28th, 2022, and you are catching us just in time for OTP's weekend review with Stu. I don't have any clever names for it on a Thursday. Nothing that I could think of rhymed with Thursday. So, it's just a weekend review with Stu, but on a Thursday. Appreciate you joining us. Appreciate you being here. Sorry this show is coming to a few days late. A little bit of a coordination issue, trying to get some time figured out, but better late than never, but never late is better, and we're working on that aspect of the show. So it is summer break. It has been, at GNCC, obviously National Enduro still raced. There's been a little bit of a layback in the coverage and about the media, about the off-road world. I think a lot of people take this time to kind of sit back and take a break from it all. So apologize that the shows haven't been regular and consistent, but the plan is to get back to that. The plan is to bring back OTP Tuesdays in its true form, to have 2 to 3 people on the show every week, 2 to 3 different people on the show every week. And I know a couple weeks ago we did tease that we were going to go over some team announcements, some team changes, some rumors that we've been hearing, and let me tell you something, they are big. There's a lot of musical chairs going on in the off-road world. I've been hearing all sorts of crazy stuff, but I want to dedicate a show to that. And it's hard to put Stu on the spot and talk about those type of situations because he is obviously one of the people that is negotiating a new contract. Not only that, a lot of people get privy to some information on the inside of people talking back and forth and saying what's going on. So, that being said, it's tough for someone in Stu's position to be able to talk about that kind of stuff because a lot of the stuff, they don't want to go public. But that's why we're On the Pipe Podcast. We are the off-road news. We are the ones that gets the intel and gives it to you. The whole point of On the Pipe Podcast is to basically everyone who listens to this to make you feel like you are an integral part of the off-road community. Each and every single one, don't get me wrong, that I probably said that the wrong way. I apologize. Every single one of you is an integral part of the off-road community. But what I meant by that is not everybody can call the riders directly and say, hey, I heard you were going so-and-so. What's up? What's going on with that? I heard they're going here and they're going there. What have you heard? And so the goal of the show is to shine a brighter light on off-road. And with that comes transparency. So there are a lot of big changes going on. There are a few that I feel fully confident are guaranteed or done or close to signing or have signed. So there are several that I know for a fact. Okay, let me backtrack. There's some that I know for a fact. I would bet my bank account on it. There's some that I feel very confident in. And then there's a whole basket of WTF. What's going on here? These people could go here. I've heard they're going there. They could be going there. Don't know. So we are going to break that down. I think I got a little bit of an idea, and I texted some people about it earlier today, but I have not yet gotten an answer on it yet. But hopefully next week we'll do a little bit of a roundtable discussion and get everybody together and kind of do a mid-season recap. So I think that's the plan. So be on the lookout for that. And then we need to get these things back rolling regularly. We need to get these things back going. We need to get you on here. If you're listening to the show, chances are you've been listening to the show for a while. Chances are you got a really cool story, and chances are you race dirt bikes too. And so we need to get people on here. So I think I've explained it on here before, and a lot of this stuff I did talk about, and including some of the team stuff on my Twitch channel. So I know I've been pumping that here the last couple weeks. If you go to twitch.com/onthepikegaming, yes, it's gaming for now because I was too stupid to make it On the Pipe podcast, and now I can't change it. So if you go there, Mondays and Tuesdays, I stream at 11 a.m., and one time I edited some videos. The other times I play some video games, do whatever. But you can join me over there and then also go live at other random times. So if you see it pop up on the Instagram story on OTP, that means I'm currently live, because as soon as I get done, I take that link down, or I take that story down. But we did kind of talk about all this because people come in there and they ask questions, and then I just get put on the spot and start blabbing. So it's a really cool way to interact. And like I said, a lot of this stuff did come up on Mondays or Tuesdays stream. So if you do want a more candid approach to some of the information or some of the opinions that I may have, that's the place to do it at. But yeah, so check it out on Twitch. But anyway, what I was getting at is that there are, I don't remember what I was getting at. I was about to fake it and just keep blabbering until it came back to me. And I felt like I was going to be on a pretty good roll, but I for sure don't remember what I was talking about. Oh, it was you, the fan, the viewer. That's what it was about. So that's what we talked about on the stream, is to start the show. We're about to hit 5 years, which I can't even fathom. We are a couple weeks away from OTP 5 years, which blows my mind. But to start the show and build the thing up, I started this show when I was the director for the Racer TV shows, the broadcast, the GNCC broadcast. I was the one in the trailer pressing the buttons. Hey, camera 3, going live, camera 3, waiting on you, camera 4, we're live on camera 4. Like, that was me. Looking for racers and trying to put together that Racer TV thing. And at the same time, I was also the announcer for the Full Gas Sprint Enduro series, which opened up a lot of doors for me. And I think I've gone into detail about that as well, about the relationships and stuff formed through Full Gas. And that's, between those two things, that's really how I got as involved in the industry as I am now. But that's also the year that we started this very podcast, and that was 5 years ago, which I can't believe. But to start everything off and to get it going, we had to have all the pro riders on, because I had to bank on those pro riders following to get the exposure of OTP. And now we're at the point where OTP has a pretty large following. When you look at it, it's a pretty large following. A lot of people listen to the show. A lot of people listen to it from all over the place. The two biggest places are North Carolina and Pennsylvania. So everywhere else on the East Coast is completely covered, but there's more and more people listening from out west. There's more and more people listening from Australia. There's more and more people listening from Europe. There's a lot of Canadian listeners. This thing has really developed a reach of its own, and to the point where I'm at a race and people recognize my voice and say something to me about it. So it's really cool, the community that we've built, and I think this is a very engaging community. And I appreciate it. I'll never understand it, but I sincerely appreciate it. But now OTP has a voice. OTP has a following. So now we can dive into the amateur riders, the people with stories, the crew guys, the team sponsors, all that kind of stuff, because now we have a platform to get other people's story out on, and we're not relying on other people to get our show out. So that's the cool part about OTP. That's the cool part about the dynamic, and that's the cool part about everything that we've built to this point. I've been sitting here struggling with some personal things here lately. As most everyone knows that listens to this thing, I'm going on 4 months now of leaving my full-time job, and it almost seems like the show has gotten more sporadic and less structured since I've had more time to dedicate to it. I can't give you a good explanation for it without giving you a full explanation for it, but just been going through some personal stuff, so I'm hoping that I can get that back on track, and I'm hoping that we can continue what we've built and what we've started over here at OTP. But I do care about each and every single one of you, and I do appreciate everybody that listens. And it's all of this is why we're able to add some sponsors on to the show, and need to look for more sponsors so that way we can keep the thing going and make sure that they come out on time, because when people pay you money, you got to do what they're paying you money for. So hit me up, OTP baby. No, I'm just kidding. But people like Beta Motorcycles. As everyone that listens knows, Beta Motorcycles is the official manufacturer of On the Pipe podcast. Beta Motorcycles has been family owned and operated since 1905. They manufacture the finest enduro, trials, and dual sport motorcycles that are known for their premium quality and rideability. Beta Motorcycles are the best looking bikes on the market, period. Just so you know. And back it up with their superior performance. Head over to betausa.com for more information on their available models or to find a dealer near you to get yours today. Now, what's also really cool is that now this is working. This is working. This branding opportunity is working. People associate me with Beta, the Beta team, the people. I can't tell you how many times I go to a race and someone says, "Hey, what are them Betas known for?" And I say, "Premium quality and rideability." So, I know it might be a pain to listen to that thing every week, but it's working. People know that it's coming, and those Beta motorcycles are so sick. And then they are even bringing back BYOB, Build Your Own Beta. You can go on Beta's website and you can order a dirt bike with everything you want on your dirt bike. Who else does that? No one else does that. I'll save you the time. Don't even Google it. No one. You can pick your tires. You can pick your suspension. You can pick all sorts of stuff. You can pick how you want your Beta to show up. And it will show up like that out of the crate. And so then you're not immediately taking a brand new bike and changing everything on it, because you can order it how you want it. Personalized, custom to you. Build your own Beta. Check out betausa.com to find out more information about that. And also they have a warranty. Only dirt bike with a warranty. So all those things are cool. But this episode is also brought to you in part by Zach Tussle at Raymond James Financial. Zach is a racer, and Zach is a financial advisor. He helps his clients win when it comes to retirement and financial planning. If you or someone you know wants to save and invest for their future, or is already retired and needs advice for income during retirement, Zach Tussle is always my first recommendation. Find out more by Googling Zach Tussle or on their website at financialadvisorsdenvernc.com. You can find a link directly to Zach Tussle's social medias on my Instagram story right now. Mine, I mean TShep704, not OTP. Because this morning I went and played golf with Mr. Zach Tussle and called it a business meeting. I will say it's pretty safe to rule out professional golfer in either one of our immediate future, but we did have a very good time, and we did spend this morning playing some golf. So it was cool to catch up with Zach and go out there on the links. And yeah, right now a ton of people have questions about financial investment and financial advising, and everyone sees the stock market, and I think that scares a lot of people. People see their 401ks down, and that scares a lot of people. But what that means for you is that if you are not already started investing, there is no better time than right now to get into investing. While everything is low, buy low, sell high. I mean, that's the name of the game. But I'm not going to go into detail about it, because I am not a financial advisor. But you know who is a financial advisor? Zachary Tussle at Raymond James Financial. And he can be your financial advisor. And he could also be your competitor if you race in A-class at a woods race or moto race, because he races as well, and he's fast, and he's one of us. So check him out. Hit him up. And then also a big thanks to our buddy at Armored Graphics. They have been with us since the very beginning, all 5 of these years. Armored Graphics has been with us. Paul Sachak over at Armored Graphics was live and in person for like the first 5 podcasts that we ever did. He has been on the show several times, and he is a good buddy of mine, and they do very great, very quality work. Check them out, armoredgraphics.com, or on the socials at Armored Graphics. With that being said, I think I covered everything, but when I do these things alone, just these monologues before we get started, pretty much every single time I forget to say something. and I don't remember it till after the show is posted. So that probably happened. But one thing I do want to make sure I get out there once again, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. As always, be a friend, tell a friend if you enjoy these shows. Let somebody else know about On the Pipe Podcast. And we look forward to seeing you next week. But up now is a conversation with this past weekend's Enduro winner, Stu Baylor. All right, so joining us now is the man coming straight off of a win at the Rattlesnake National Enduro, moving into third place in the National Enduro points for the season, Stu Baylor Jr. Stu, how's it feel, man? You got to win. There's no coming up short on expectations. There's no expectations versus reality. You're back in the win column. How's it feel?
It feels good to break your neck and win a race on 6 months. I'll take it. It was definitely rough. I had my work cut out for me. Ryder was riding really, really well up there, but we came away with it, and I can't take it from me.
No, not at all. And kind of one of the things that we talked about last time is like talking about stuff and doing stuff and basically all the stuff that we talk about on the podcast, and you go out and you back it up. You get a win at the National Enduro, and like you said, within 6 months of breaking your neck and your face.
Yeah, that was that we definitely had some setbacks this season. I really wish that face issue didn't happen. That was, just another one to kick me down. The points wise, we'd be looking all right now. Had we not got 0 there out in Missouri, and that was a day where I had a 35 second lead after the first test. So, little bummed on that one, but we still have a fighting chance at this thing, and I'm going to give it everything. I don't think there's any doubt that I'll give it everything I got to the finish.
Yeah, 100%. And that's one thing that I did want to bring up and talk to you about is how quickly after this past weekend did that go through your mind? The fact that when you went out to race your first one back and ended up getting hurt and didn't get any points at that round, how quickly did that enter your mind? Because, like you said, right now you're still sitting pretty good in points, but those obviously would have been much needed points as far as the championship goes. So what was your thoughts on that whole thing?
I mean, that's definitely a bummer. Like, it's hard not to live in the past when you're in this position. I'm definitely not one to dwell on the past, but it's hard not to think about what if, especially when you're talking a year-long season that you have races that could potentially cost you a championship, and that's one of those races for me. It was one that looking back at the end of the year, I sure hope doesn't cost me that number one plate. I'm going to do everything I can to come back from it. But luckily going into that race, I was tied for points. So I lost exactly 30 points to Ryder there, and we're 18 points out. So, realistically I should have hopefully I'd love to say a 12-point lead at this point in the season if it weren't for that round. And, that's a tough pill to swallow, but at the same time, it's racing. Everybody's got to go through it. I can't dwell on it. All I've got to do is make up for it now.
Yeah, and so for those that are listening and aren't aware of the points, right now you got Ryder Lafferty still with the points lead with 119. You got your brother, Grant Baylor, in second place with 111. And then you moved into third with 101 points over Toth, who's got 96 points. How much have you played around with these numbers and done any math on it to see what the rest of the year needs to look like?
Yeah, the way that I saw it, to be honest, and I've said it before, and I just keep doubting Ryder, but he keeps proving me wrong. It is. I was really thinking at the end of the day it was going to come down to me and Grant, and Ryder just keeps clicking off good results. So, this race in particular last year, the test that pretty much won it, test 5 for me this year, I beat Ryder by 30 seconds. Last year, I beat him by 2 minutes in that test, in that same exact test.
Oh, wow.
So when I go back and I look at last year, and I'm like, oh, Ryder had some good rounds here and there, but like Pennsylvania was not one of them at all. So, and I know it was dry this year, and Ryder's a really good dry slick rider. That's been one of his conditions. He's had his best results on, that 4th overall in Georgia a couple of years. It was dusty as hell, and that seems to be where he shines. So I knew he was going to be better, but I did not expect him to be the guy to beat that day. So, moving forward, I'm going to have to rethink these numbers because Ryder's kind of an oddball. With Toth and Grant, you've got data, you've got years of fairly consistent results, and this race this weekend, I would have said I should have ended up third. Toth or Grant should have won, and Toth or Grant should have been second. With Toth being under the weather, Grant banging himself up in the first section, that opened a window and gave me a little opportunity to get in front of those guys. And I kind of didn't even think about Ryder. Like after test one, I was like, you know what, we're going to get in those rocks. And Ryder's not the best rock rider. And before you know it, he's got a pretty decent lead over me. It's just inching away. And I was like, holy shit, I got to figure this out. And I asked Corey, my mechanic, I was like, all right, what is the test that I always win? Which one's the rocky one? And he's like, test 5. And I'm like, you sure it's not 6? And he said, yeah, it's test 5 this year. I was like, all right, I've got to drop the hammer in there. Like that's one of the tests of all the national enduros. That single test stands out to me, probably more so than any other test. I've won every time I've ever won that event, which is now 3 or 4 times. It's always been in one section. It was that section. Even days where I was 6th place on the day, I would win that test. So I knew I could get a good bit of time in there, and I actually ended up catching Grant in that section and crashed towards the end and lost a little bit of time, but I still had a 30-second advantage over the rest of the crowd. And I knew going into test 6, like, okay, points wise, I have to beat Ryder. I looked, I'm like, all right, Ricky's not going to be able to catch Ryder. Grant's not going to be able to catch Ryder. But as long as I can beat Ryder, that puts me 5 points ahead. We've got 5 rounds left, which is a possible 25 more points to gain, which takes me from 18 down to 7 up. So, I'm running the numbers while I'm racing, and it's definitely a thought. It's a long game. When you've been in when you're a race winner versus a champion, it changes your mindset when you're lining up for sections. Like if I know I have to beat him in one test, and I have to do it bad enough to win the race, for some reason I do have that ability. And I'm able to hang it out when I need to make it happen. And I think that comes, like I said, with winning a few championships and a little bit of age on my side. And that rider instinct and that wisdom plays into a championship at the end of the day, more so than just speed or just winning a race or a test. And luckily I've been in this position before, and I still think it's very salvageable. But my work's definitely cut out for me because Ryder's the oddball. I mean, I don't know where he's going to be strong. I look at these last 5 rounds, and I've got Indiana, Ohio, Tulsa, Alabama, Marquette, Michigan. And in the past, Alabama, I've been very strong there. I've got a couple wins down at Perry Mountain. I've only got 1 win ever at Indiana. Grant and Toth ride there very, very good. So, I'm looking. One's a toss-up. One I probably won't win. Marquette has been one of my strongest rounds, so I feel like I should be able to win there. Tulsa, Josh beat me there last year, but it came right down to the wire, and it was really close. That's another toss-up. So, and then Ohio, I've had good and bad rides there, but it's not necessarily one of my strongest rounds. So, and I think Ryder had a very good ride there at Ohio. It's been quite a few years ago, but I believe he won a section at the Grassman, 4 or 5 years ago. So Ryder might be very strong in Ohio. that's the only one that I can say, okay, Ryder should do really well here. The rest of them, it's like, I just don't know. I know where Grant and Toth are strong. So, there's a lot to factor in when you're looking at the rest of the season and you're only halfway there.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. We're exactly at the halfway point for National Enduro. 5 rounds in, 5 rounds left. And it's crazy to think, not crazy to think, but how analytical you are about it, doing that math in your head, thinking about what you got to do in the moment, and then also just kind of breaking down these next 5 races to figure out, okay, well, I'm good here, he's good here. But, I mean, just as a whole, it's got to be a really good feeling to know that you're in the hunt. I mean, obviously, 18 points down, but just as you mentioned, you have the opportunity to end up 7 points up if you guys go 1 and 2 for the rest of the season. But on any given day, just like you said, Toth can be good, Ricky can be good, Grant can be good, Ryder can be good. But, I mean, just everything that you've been through, everything that it took to get back to this point now, and it's not like you're a one-time champion. You're a 5-time champion of the series. How good does it feel to know everything that you've went through this year and still know that you're in the hunt for a championship?
I mean, it's definitely, it's almost surreal at this point, when you're laying there with a broken neck. Like, obviously you want to stay positive, but it's tough to wear that neck brace for 12 weeks and stay positive. So, I feel like I've done everything I can to get back, but a championship's always the goal, but now it definitely seems like it's a realistic goal, and that changes my sights for the next few months on where I want to focus. And normally I would say that I would be geared up towards trying to win that GNCC champion or that GNCC, those final 4 GNCCs, and setting towards next year to win a GNCC championship. And my focus would be there. But right now I don't have a realistic expectation of the GNCCs panning out for the rest of this season. I can definitely make some improvements to hopefully better myself for next year in the GNCCs. But the realistic goal is National Enduro. So rather than my testing and my riding going towards GNCC, I think that for the next few months, like, I'm going to look more towards the National Enduro side. For me personally, that's where I'm going to put my focus, and hopefully it'll pan out. But I know the next 4 rounds. I know what terrain to expect, what tires to run, the whole 9 there. So, I can go ahead and start preparing myself now for Ohio, and I think that's going to be the goal. Like, it's now that it is realistic. I mean, to come back from this, like, I've got to set my sights on that, and it's kind of it's definitely a different feeling, like knowing that I came from a place where nobody probably thought I would have a shot at anything this season. So now it's time to do the Baylor trick, the old hat trick, and prove them all wrong.
Man, it's crazy that at the beginning of the season, one of the things that I think you and I even talked about on the show, I've definitely talked about it on the show, was that gap between Sumter and round 2. You're like, why do we start racing in January, February, and then second rounds in May? And looking at this whole situation, that's kind of very much benefited you and given that time to heal up and get back to it.
It was like it was meant to be. They called the championship for me before I even knew it.
See, look at that. And you thought that there was issues over there, and they're out there changing the series around for you.
Absolutely.
So what's it like with Ryder? I mean, Ryder's a guy that stayed with you, lived with you, trained with you. You gave too many secrets to, and now he's the guy standing in front of Grant too, but right now Ryder leading the points. What's your relationship like with him? Are you guys still buddies? Is it kind of a little bit more reserved in the way that you talk to each other now? What's that whole dynamic like?
I mean, I've been in this position a lot of times with a lot of different riders through my career, and To me, it doesn't change. Like, he's still a good buddy of mine. To him, I think it's a little bit different. Like, he's definitely a cool guy on me a little more than he has in the past. He doesn't really want to hang out or do much like he normally would. He doesn't really talk to me or Snapchat me much anymore. So I think to him, he's Alacrity. I mean, it's in his blood. Like, I've battled with his uncle. As crazy as it sounds, like, I got my first championship against Mike 10 years ago. So, you know, I remember how Mike was, and I see a lot of that in Ryder, you know, that quiet kind of asshole guy. Not like, that's no pun intended. I mean, that's just how they are. Like, a lot of people need that mental focus, and they almost have to not necessarily dislike their competition, but they don't want to like their competition. They don't want to be around them too much. Like, and Ryder's definitely that type where he kind of wants to stay to himself a little more so than normal. I just about had him broke out of his shell. He's a quiet kid anyway, but just about had him broke out of his shell completely when he was staying down here, and I think we lost him a little bit now that he's the big shot. But no, we still get along. We still go fishing together. Like, out in Missouri, we hung out a lot out there, and we were actually tied for points at that point. But and we rode together up in Pennsylvania, but he didn't want to come out to the shoot with us or go out to the bar afterwards. So you know, that's him. I mean, that's how he is, and if that's how he has to stay focused. Like, doesn't bother me a bit. I've been there. I mean, there's been guys who I've battled with that hated my guts. So I'd much rather at least be able to go fishing with him and bullshit with him from time to time than walk away with our nose up in the air every time we see each other. And that's definitely not him. But you know, knowing what I know about Ryder, like, he is the quiet type that likes to stay to himself, and I'm obviously the extrovert. So, you know, for me, like, I'm going to go bust his balls right on the starting line, and I'm sure that drives him crazy. But, you know, I don't – I know he made a comment about me trying to get in his head a while back. If I want to get in somebody's head, there's no questioning if I am.
Yeah. I know Ryder listens to the show, so I will give him a pass on the bar situation, though. That doesn't work for everybody, Stu.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was Friday night. He had 2 days to recover, and I danced. It was amateur night. But no, I mean, yeah, I like I said, I don't want to mess with Ryder's head. I don't care. Like, it. At the end of the day, there's been guys that I've definitely got in their head. I've pushed on them a bit, but Ryder's not one of them. Like, I don't have anything to gain. I'd have a friendship to lose there. So, you know, we'll respect each other to the end, and I guarantee we'll both put it all on the line when it comes down to it. But like I said, he definitely has gotten a little more distant here in the last few weeks. Noticed that up in PA. He didn't want to hang out with the boys. He wanted to go do his thing and stick to himself. Same thing in Missouri. Like, when Thursday rolled around, it was no more bullshit. He ain't going bow fishing with us. He's going to sit down in his truck and stare at the wall. I don't know what he does.
Man, I mean, yeah, that's a tough situation, because just like you have a lot riding on this season, he's got a lot riding on this season too. I mean, he came into this year not knowing if he'd have a ride, and now he's in this position. So it's got to be tough to balance on both ends, really, I would imagine. Yeah,
most definitely. I mean, Ryder, he came in not knowing if he had a ride, but also probably being very low on most people's radars
and being kicked off of his team last year.
Yeah, I mean, he got screwed there. So, you know, he really had nothing. I mean, he got screwed by that team, and I've been in the same place, so it really sucks. And Ryder doesn't really trust people anyway, so that made things even tougher for him to come back from. But, you know, I had a conversation last year, and I told quite a few people, like, hey, you need to go hire Ryder. He will be winning by next year. He'll be the XC2 guy. And people looked at me funny when I said that, but nobody's looking at me funny now. I mean, I know Ryder well enough. I've ridden with him I've ridden with him long enough to know that he's a sponge. Like, the guy is so good at paying attention and soaking it all in. And I mean, little things like we've worked some feet on the peg drills and some I call it the shoulder drop, like just some different techniques. And like for me to change it, it took a long time, and Ryder would master it in a couple weeks. He gets really frustrated with himself if he can't. And I look back actually at Virginia. I looked at some photos and I was like, that fucker, he's taking my techniques. Like, but no, he's not one of the normal racers that knows it all. There's a lot of guys that know too much that you can't get through to. And he's not that guy at all. I mean, like he's very open. Like if I tell, let's pick on Bubs for a second, but if I tell Bubs something, he's going to have a smart ass comment as to why it won't work and why this works better for him. Ryder doesn't say a word, just gets right to work and tries it. And to be at his level, most guys would not. Like they want to argue, they want to be bullheaded. They've done the same thing for so long in their career that it's tough to change. It's tough to change small things. I mean, for me to break a habit with how many days I've spent on a bike, if I've got to break a habit, it might take me years. Sorry, my kid is grunting as he's crawling up on top of me, if you can hear him in the background.
What's up, Levi?
He just came to talk. He just came for the party. Who's that? Who are we talking to? Go ahead and talk to him.
Levi, what are you doing? He's just looking at the phone.
He's just staring at the phone. He's been very chatty lately. I figured that he might want in on this interview. I don't know what he says, but there he is. I don't know what he's been saying, but we've been having full conversations here lately about not sure what, but he's got a large vocabulary as of lately. He said a few things that if you heard it in public, you might get funny looks. I don't know if he.
No, not your kid.
Yeah, I don't know if he got these words from me or what he's copying, but I heard a word last night that I was like, God, kid, do not say that in public. Like, please.
Probably Jade.
Please don't.
If I had to guess.
Yeah, I think he got it from Jade. I would agree.
Man, that's awesome. They turn 1 year old and then all of a sudden just start babbling about everything, I guess.
Oh, I know. It's ridiculous. But he still refuses to walk. Like, he can stand up. He can hop on his strider and, like, he pushes it around, but he will not walk. Like, has absolutely zero. I don't know. He's fallen a few times on his face every time he tries. And about 3 months ago, he decided that he was done. He was ready to do it, and after a good face plant or two, he had enough. So, but he currently has a black eye from his strider that he decided to hop up on. Yeah, there he is. I knew he wanted to talk about something. He's telling us why he crashed on his strider, but he had his bottle in his mouth, wasn't using his hands, was hopped up on there and jumping around and looped her out backwards, fell on one of my championship trophies, which is a big wood carving bear with a sharp edge. So he's got a busted lip and a black eye, but yeah, he's had a pretty good get off there on the strider, but he dusted himself up back off and hopped back on it shortly after.
If you're gonna hit a bear, hit a grizzly, I guess.
Yeah.
But man, let's go back to this past weekend. Just a couple things coming out of it. So section 1, it was a shorter test, and I know that those ones kind of starting the day off, and it's a shorter section, but the entire XC1 or the entire Pro 1 class was essentially within 5 seconds of each other. So when you start out the day and everyone is within 5 seconds, everyone in the class from first place to 7th place, all within that 5 second time frame, what does that do to kind of set the tone for the rest of the day? And since it is a shorter test and it is the first test, is that, like, when you see those results, is that an indicator of how the day is going to go, or do you not put a whole lot into that?
That test, not necessarily, because it's a big grass track, and that one, I've seen guys do very well in that test and then suck the rest of the day. I mean, I've done it before. I've won that test and ended up 6th on the day. So that test, I was a little bit aggravated. I got hung up a couple times behind some riders there. I got stuck between a couple trees with a rider midway through the test. We just kind of dip out of the field and back into the woods, and I got hung up. And I'm bad about counting, like, because I want to know what kind of time I really lost, so that I know, where everybody else is and where I am. I lost about 6 to 7 seconds in that section right there. And so for me, that test was a good indicator that I was riding really well that day. And I looked through, and I really, again, I'm not giving Ryder enough credit, but kind of expected him to be at the back of that pack, and he wasn't. I think we were a second apart out of that first test, and normally, again, Ryder's just not that good at that track. So I was like, well, shit, he's here today. So, I got into that second test, and that's usually what really indicates where everybody's going to be. And again, everybody was fairly close in there, except Grant, who had banged himself up a little bit. But Ryder and I think came out of test 2, and we were then maybe 2 or 3 seconds apart by the end of test 2, and test 3, we were 6 seconds apart. So. That first test doesn't really normally mean much on how the racing's going to go, but it definitely followed that couple second gap pretty much all day after that test, and it was, it seemed to be an indicator on that day, but like I say, normally that is not the case at all. Normally, especially that section, in particular, that section is not one that sets the tone for the rest of the day, just being different than about anything. I mean, it's very similar. Like Oklahoma has a grass track that we start in as well, and you might win that grass test and lose the next wood section by 40 seconds. So, but it's for me personally, I do like that short section to get going. Like, it kind of warms you up a little bit, and less trees to hit in a grass track.
That is a very key point about grass tracks. But so that the first test, you and Ryder, like you said, a second apart, but all within the same 5 seconds of everybody in the class, and then you two split test wins throughout the rest of the day. So Ryder won 2, you won 2, and Ryder won the last one. But it really, you did most of your damage, like you said, in test 5. Why? What is up with that? So I was actually talking to Russ Anderson and Dalton Anderson the other day, and they were up there and raced it, and he specifically mentioned the difficulty of test 5 and how much harder test 5 was than all the other ones. So what about that test helps you excel in it? You mentioned that's the test that you do good at each year.
I think a few things. Like, number one, it is a very challenging test, and I don't think, and not to sound cocky or arrogant, but I don't think that there's another rider as fast as I am in the rocks. Just flat out speed in the rocks. I'm willing to get really sketchy in the rocks, and that test is one of those tests where you, as a rider, you can really test yourself, but you can also screw yourself up in there. So I've always seemed to fare really well in that test, just because it is very demanding. And my bike setup, I always set my bike up for that test. Like, for some reason, have always wanted my bike to feel better in the bigger, gnarlier rocks at that race, because you can give up almost essentially what happened this weekend. I can give up a couple seconds here, a couple seconds there, because my bike's not 100% in other places. But in that test, if I can make up that kind of time, it's all worth it. So, even last year, if you look, there was, which one test I got turned around there, but that test, I think I beat everybody in there by 20 seconds. Even Toth, who's probably equally as fast in rock sections, but won't quite send it quite as sketchy as I will from time to time. And that section was test 6 last year, and I think we beat Ryder by 2 minutes in there. So that section just always favors my style. the big rocks, the gnarly rocks, the rock gardens, even at Snowshoe. Like the side that I always do better on is the side that doesn't have as much mud. It's just got a lot more rocks. And the passes that I made last year at Snowshoe always seem to be in the rock gardens. And I think some of it comes with bike setup. Some of it comes with willing to get a little bit sketchier than the next guy, and some of it comes with being able to read a different line through the rocks. I never really try to pick a line through the rocks. I go straight. A lot of guys try to follow a certain line when they get to the rocks, and for me, it's like wherever the straightest line is, I'm going to set myself up early and go as straight as possible for as long as possible. Drop my heels and hang my ass off the back and let her eat.
Yeah, that seems like a good way to get good times.
Yeah, pretty much.
What?
I mean,
go ahead.
It did bite me. Right at the end, I caught Grant and went down probably 2 miles from the finish. I ended up just behind Grant, and then I tucked the front. But yeah, it worked out
in the long run. When did you switch over to the trials tire? Because obviously on the podium, those pictures that you took, I noticed that was a lot of things that people were commenting about was having the trials tire on, and you've actually talked about how much or when the situations are that you run a trials tire, and obviously you broke it out over the weekend. When did you make that switch to that rear tire?
I made the switch right after the first test. So I went with the 53 in the first test, being a little drier. We went the 33-53 combo. After that, we went with 33 in the trials for the rest of the day. And last year, I tried running a normal tire in one section, and I also had some issues in that test, but I think I threw away some time in there by using that tire. And that was, that's one of those reasons that, like I said, I always count seconds when I make mistakes. Last year there was one test where I think I gave up close to a minute to Toth, and I came in and I told my mechanic, I was like, I lost a good 20, 25 seconds in there. I always count when I make big mistakes because then when I come in, I say, I lost 20, 25. He says, you got beat by a minute. Well, now I know it was the tire as well. Like I should have only given up 25 seconds. So, based off last year, if I would have run a trials tire every test except the first one, I would have won the race. So this year, there was definitely sections where it would have favored an 81EX or 53. But overall, I remembered last year, and I was like, I'm not going to chase my ass. We're just going straight to the trials tire. I ride it very efficiently, and I want to stick with what I know. And I'd ridden it all week, so I knew that tire would fare well, and it did.
Dang. So how does that change your riding style? Like the way that you approach and attack the track? Does that change any in your mind between going from a knobby to a trials tire? I imagine you can't ride them both the same way.
It's a lot different, actually. So a trials tire, number one, is a larger outside diameter, so the whole ass end of the bike raises up, which means I'm going to change my sag slightly to compensate for that. But it also makes the bike corner a little bit better. At the same time, there are no transition knobs out on the side, so when you go to enter a corner, if you lean in too much, you'll start pushing the back end. So the way to ride a trials tire is braking a little bit earlier, throttle a little bit sooner, carrying good speed, trying to keep your bike up and down, so feet on the pegs, so a lot of standing. And it's just slightly different than the way that I would ride a 33-53 rear. So it's definitely different. I wouldn't recommend just going out and racing on one, but it's something that I've done for a long time, and I know how the tire works and the best way to use it to my advantage. So that's why we went with that tire. There's been a couple races like last year in Oklahoma. We ran that tire in a couple of sections, but there's definitely times where that tire is way better. As we're talking about this, I get a text from Ryan Sipes. Yo, you run the trials tire at the PA Enduro? Yeah, a lot of people have been asking about that. I mean, my DMs have been blowing up. Like, what are you thinking? How did you go so fast on this tire? like I said, it takes a little bit of time to adapt to that tire. Like I know Ryder and Ricky tried that tire this week testing, or the week leading up testing, and I think it was too much to adapt to that week for them. And again, it's something I've been doing for so long. For me, it does work, and I like it. I'm also just not a fan of the 81EX in certain conditions. So to me, it was just easier to go with that tire, and that's what we did.
Dang. So did you run it for a little bit at Virginia or no?
I did. I ran the last 2 tests on it, and
that's what I was thinking.
The reason I did that, I was so tired and so done at Virginia. The trials tire, if you're fast, will not make you any faster. I promise it will not make your lap times won't drop unless you're just riding a straight rock garden. What it does is it makes you smart, and it makes you carry speed, not recreate speed. You ride smoother and a little less off the throttle. So when I switched to it in Virginia, it was because I was riding on the edge and I was making too many mistakes. So for the last 2 tests, it was kind of hard slick up there. And honestly, again, I could probably be faster on a 53 in that condition. But the trials tire just made it to where I could ride a little bit hesitant and still go fast and efficient without getting sketchy. So
it's almost like a self-governor to them tame you down a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Think about what you're doing.
Sorry, I'm texting Sipes back. I don't know why everybody's so worried about this tire. It's got everybody screwed up. They're wondering what's going on.
That's why I looked through the comments. It was just everybody asking about it or saying something about it.
Yeah. Like I say, for me, it's a tire that I've spent a lot of time on. So it does work for me. It doesn't work for a lot of people. My brother was also on the trials tire, but like I said, he had those issues early on, banging himself up a little bit. But
he had Alaska on the brain. That's what that was.
That's exactly what he did. He claimed he faked an injury so that he could get the hell out of there. He didn't want to be on the podium. He said, "You know what? We'll settle for 4th so we can haul ass."
Yeah, we got places to be.
Exactly. Yeah. It's definitely a tire that Grant and I choose over a lot of other tires when it gets rocky, but it's not for everybody, I can tell you that. It's a tough one to ride.
Well, now we know. I got, just to ask a couple questions as a fan of the sport. So Caleb Russell raced National Enduros for in and out or throughout a couple years. He won the championship 2015 and ended up racing the first half of the series in 2017. Which is when I think he was riding a 250 at National Enduros, and so he wanted to ride a 250 at GNCCs as well. And then I think he just decided to move his focus past that. But one of the things that stood out to me that you said is something that I've heard Caleb say at the Full Gas Sprint Enduros, was he used to say that he had one ludicrous test in him where he could put the hammer down and gap everyone enough to be able to maintain that gap throughout the day, and then just kind of maintain that lead and let it dwindle down throughout the day. And you kind of mentioned that about National Enduro, of knowing that you have those tests in you. What was it like, just as somebody that's raced Caleb so much at GNCCs, and then you're a 5-time National Enduro champion, when he was out there racing them, what was the racecraft like between you guys? I know you guys have battled and gone back and forth a lot, but was there any difference in racing him at the National Enduros versus everywhere else or anybody else at National Enduros?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the best battles that I had at the National Enduros were with Thad, but with Caleb, like the year that he won, I had a pretty rough year. I broke my collarbone right off the bat, and then broke my hand, and just had a tough season. I think I ended up 4th there that year, but also had a time penalty in Indiana because their key time was off, and apparently they wouldn't admit the fault there, and there was a couple little issues that just kind of screwed me that season. But I never really got to racing that hard there. The next year we did, and it almost seemed to me like he didn't necessarily want to be there. And when you're racing against somebody for a championship that doesn't necessarily want to be there, that's heart's not in it, they definitely act a little bit differently. And as you know, I mean, Caleb was the GNCC guy. That's what he wanted to do, where he wanted to be. And, in 2015, obviously he won full gas, National Enduros, and GNCC in a single year, which is an incredible feat. So it's definitely tough to say like what racecraft was there. I think he wanted to get his championship. He did what his dad had done prior, and kind of get out. Now with that in 2017, it was on all the way to the finish. We lined up at Alabama, where whoever won the championship, and it was like that all year. It teeter-tottered back and forth, and I went in with a points lead, but it was like 2 points, so I had to win. If I didn't win and he won, he got it, or vice versa. So that day, I believe we went 1 and 2 in every test all day long, and it came down to just a few seconds after 50 miles of racing. And what was unique there is we used that freak test, that supernatural speed all day long, and we ended up beating third place by over 2 minutes. But we were only a few seconds apart. So,
wow.
We rode every single test all day long as if it were our last test. And, we both had money on the line. We needed to win. We wanted to win. So we pushed the absolute ragged edge all day. And I sat there with a stopwatch at the last test, waiting. And when he finally came through, I think the way that it worked out, he was a couple, like maybe 3 or 4 rows behind me or something like that, something weird. And so the stress level was high. Like I'm anticipating it, and somebody looks at me, and you could hear him coming down the hill, and I was like, "How far out do you think he is?" And they're like, "Probably 20 seconds." I said, "You sure?" Because normally, you can hear him 5-10 seconds out, and then they're there. And if it was 5 or 10 seconds, I was beat. And they're like, "No, you kind of come down, and you can hear you for a second, then you got a couple chicanes before the finish." I was like, "All right, so you sure 20 seconds?" And he's like, "Yeah, well, here he comes. What's the clock say?" And I'm like, I got it. That was one of those days where, like I said, every test that each of us lined up for, I mean, it was that supernatural speed to where you can't fathom how fast our reaction time was. I mean, you literally couldn't explain it. I mean, the things that we do on a bike, on a blind track against a blind competitor. I mean, you're completely at a national enduro. You don't have prior knowledge of where the track goes, what you're racing on. And you can't see your competitor. There's no split times. There's no indication on how you're doing. It is simply up to you and your machine. And that's how it was that day. And it was pretty badass.
Dude, that sounds like it. Just picturing that as you're going through the story and how close it came down to you two and how you kind of gapped your way out from the rest of the field. That's got to be insane racing with that much on the line and pushing the pace to that extent.
Yeah. I mean, that was, like I said, that was by far the most intense one that I've had. I mean, that one came down to it. I mean, I've had a few championships of the National Enduros that came down to the last race, to where I had to wrap it up there, but I had an advantage to where I could finish 4th or 3rd. That day, it was whoever wins gets the championship, and I think I won that championship by 2-3 points. So, that was that one there, that all day long. I mean, you're anxious. Your anxiety is through the roof. I didn't sleep all night long, and I guarantee he didn't either. I mean, I remember laying there in the back of the little camper I used to have, and I could not even think about going to sleep. I just laid there like 1,000 thoughts running through my mind, and that was definitely the most stressed out feeling like going into that race knowing that you couldn't fold, and neither of us folded to pressure. I mean, it wasn't like one of us had a bad day. A lot of times you see a championship come down to that, and somebody usually has a bad day. That day we were both on it from start to finish. I mean, we both lined up for that race. So
man, the sleepless nights and staying up thinking about that and the battling back and forth throughout the day, does that make it, obviously it's more exciting, but would you rather, I guess, win a championship by like wrap it up early? Like wrap it up around early because you're so far ahead, or have a winner take all showdown at the final round? Which, because you've been in both of those situations, so which one of those kind of gets you going more?
That's tough to say. Like, I would rather win a race by a second and a championship by a mile. The championship gets you thinking about every bad race, like everything that you screwed up. There's not one day, one race, one second place that you don't think about, that you don't look back and dwell on when it comes down to the last race in the championship. When it comes down to 1 second in a race, it doesn't matter. You won. Could you have done better all day and maybe won by a little more? Absolutely. But when you win a race, it's like, I like that exciting, 1 second come down to it on a race. But for that championship, it's really, really stressful when you start thinking back and you're like, damn, that one day, that one thing, Thad, I'm sure, was looking back at ISD saying, why the hell did I go there and break my wrist? Because I think he got a fourth whenever he came back from that. And, I'm sitting there going, why did I screw up in Pennsylvania? What was I thinking up there? What did I do? Why did I crash so soon and so big? Like, that, like I said, that the championship, it is exciting. It's more exciting for the fans, but for me, I'd much rather, like I said, win a race by a second and a championship by a race. So
that's a very good way to put it. But so, I mean, going down into one of those situations, you went into the last test. I think you were 14 seconds up going into the final test this past weekend. Does that sound right? So in that situation, the race win is on the line. Ryder goes out and wins that test. You get second in that test, still almost 30 seconds above third place. So in a situation like that, I guess kind of walk us through is there a difference in the mindset of maybe if you're up 5 seconds versus up 14 seconds? Like, are you still riding that one, trying to win that test and pushing as hard as you can, or are you kind of toning it back and trying to maintain?
I mean, it like you said, it depends on the scenario. In that scenario with a 14-second lead, the goal is you ride as efficiently and as fast as you can, and that all day long, nobody, even on your good test where you just rode clean and not necessarily aggressive, nobody beat you by 14 seconds. So you go back to what works, and you just nail your marks. That if you don't crash and you ride as good as you think you possibly can and you don't miss any marks, even if you're a little bit slow, you still shouldn't give up 14 seconds. If it's 3 seconds, 5 seconds, that's where things get different. That's where you go in and you ride as fast as you possibly can, but you take a couple chances. And if you make a mistake, I always count. I've said it 3-4 times today. I always count. If I make a mistake and I count 7 seconds, I know that I'm going to have to hit the next 10 turns faster than I've ever hit 10 turns in my life to cut 3 seconds back out of that. And then I'm going to take a break. I'm going to get a few good deep breaths, and then I'm going to attack the next 10 turns and make the next section count. And if you make another mistake, you throw in the towel. You ride as good as you can and hope that the other guy did the same thing. And that's the tough part. Like there's definitely a lot of different scenarios, and also depending on the rider or the section that you're going into. I mean, if it's the last test in Missouri and I know it's the waterfall section, I usually ride that section very well. So if I've got a 2-second deficit, I'm not going to ride any differently in that last section. I'm just going to nail my marks. And hopefully come away with it. Or, if I went into the last test and it happened to be the 5th test this year there at Cross Forks, at the Rattlesnake, and I was 2 seconds down, I would ride that test a little bit differently than I did this year, knowing that I should win that test because it's one of my favorite tests that I ride really well, knowing that I should win by at least 10 seconds. So, like I say, a lot of it comes down to the racer. You know, if it's Toth in that test in the rocky section, then I'm going to have to push the limits because he's going to be going fast. If it's Grant, I think that I've got him covered in the rocks. If it's Ryder, I think I've got him covered in the rocks. You know, if it's a grass track, well, you know, I'm gonna have to push the limits. We're all gonna be close. So, you know, every race, every event, every racer has kind of a slightly different mentality when it comes down to how are we gonna beat this guy today.
That's a lot of processing as a race is going on.
It is. There's one thing. If there's one thing that I do too much of, it is think. I definitely overthink it when it comes right down to it. There's a lot of places where it would help to not think so much and just ride a little bit more. But again, I think it's more of the championship style rather than a race winning style. You know, I'm planning on a little bit more at the end of the day than just getting this race behind us.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of going off of that too, obviously you can't go pre-ride the tracks, you can't go look at the tracks, you're kind of reading the trail and developing it as you go, but because of your thought processing and the way that you've done it and how long you've been racing these national enduros, I feel like you're the type of person that can say how many leaves are on a branch at the 24-mile marker. Like, you know these trails inside and out. Like, you're talking about tests in Missouri, and we haven't even got there yet. How much of an advantage does that play into you, for one, knowing these trails and racing them so much and breaking them down so much in your head? But then also, damn, I had a good question, and I completely lost it. Oh, how much do the tests change from year to year? Like, when you guys go back to the same properties, you mentioned that this test 5 this past weekend was about the exact same, but last year was test 6. How often do the tests change, and are the trails relatively the same? And how much does knowing those trails benefit you?
So, knowing the section and what to expect in the section helps me with bike setup and tire setup, or tire selection. Knowing the test is never an advantage. If you, for some reason, at a national enduro, you know, you can follow a rider. It's easier to follow than lead. That's fact there. But as far as just going out for a sprint lap as fast as you can go, if you know the section and they change it on you, it's a tricky one. I mean, even
then it goes the other way.
Yeah, I mean, we did a sprint enduro here at the Shoals, and I got third place on day one at a place that I ride every single day, every day, and I got third place. So, you know, speed is speed. At our level, speed is speed. Where it helps is knowing what clickers we're going to make, what adjustments we're going to make, what sag we're going to run, what tire we're going to run, what suspension we're going to line up with. It takes 2 years to run GNCC. It takes 2 years to run a national enduro and be competitive. I mean, when people come over from Europe or whatever, you look, the first 2 years, they're going to struggle. It takes till that third year until they understand bike setup from track to track, race strategy, and they're competitors. So, you know, for me, the national enduros, I would say that I have an advantage on a lot of these guys because I've raced it so long. And I do know exactly where I want to go with my bike setup. But at the end of the day, speed. I don't remember all the sections. I remember bits and pieces, and every year it slightly changes. So, you know, I think if I remember too much, it would probably be tougher. I would expect a left, and the club put in a right and put in a new section. So I'm going left, and I'm getting lost. and that's happened before. Like I've gotten turned around by thinking I knew a place and pulling through some ribbon.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. Do you like the fact that they change their races every year? Because National Enduro, for those that don't know, basically every single one of the races on the National Enduro schedule, they happen every single year. It's just not every single year that it's on the National Enduro schedule. So all these clubs, like the one in Louisiana, National Enduro raced it last year. National Enduro didn't race it this year, but they still had the Enduro down there, I think. But
Yeah.
do you like that it kind of picks and chooses and bouncing around and changes, or do you like having a more solid foundation where you know what tracks you're going to every year?
I personally enjoy the changing of venues. I mean, it gets you to see some places of the country like Marquette, Michigan. We've obviously been there before, but I've only ever got to race up there 2 times, and it's one of my favorite race venues of all time. So to me, that was like badass when I looked at the schedule. I mean, even my wife, like, she's like, "Oh, we're going back to Marquette." And the last time we were up there, we went zip lining and all the touristy things. So, for me, like, I enjoy seeing that schedule change. Tulsa, Oklahoma, really cool place. Go out to the bars after the race, and casino. I get to go deer hunting. And we might, we're racing it 2 years back to back, and next year we may not. So, that's another one. Like I said, I really enjoy getting to see the different places and different styles, different cultures. I like beer and I like food too. So if I can find a good bar with some different food, then I'm in.
Heck yeah. See, that's like you were talking about last time. You kind of prioritize the rounds or think about the rounds based off all the extracurricular activities there is to do before and after.
There's a 1-gallon fishbowl drink that they call, what did they call it? Like the trash can or something.
Yeah.
In Marquette, Michigan, that my old trainer Nate Martin, who passed away, he and I sat down and drank a couple of those and tore up the town. So I'm already planning on making sure that I make my way up to that bar and drinking a trash can.
Is that before or after the race?
Before, obviously.
Get you in the zone, get you in the right mindset.
Exactly.
How'd you do at the shooting contest? How'd Friday go?
It was not well. It did not treat me well. I double shot a target, which gives you 0. Ricky outshot me with my own damn gun. It was bad. It was bad.
Oh man, that's what I was wondering how all that planned out on Friday. But we did see the video of the van. I will give it to you. That thing was absolutely packed to the gills. We talked about where you would put the overall trophy. After seeing that video, man, I don't even know where you got that. That trophy might still be in Pennsylvania. I don't know how you could fit anything else in that van.
There was nothing going back in that van. There was no shot I was getting it in there. So luckily John Johnson's training with us at the Shoals right now, and he was up there. So I stuck my nice guns and my trophy in there. I'll be surprised if all of it makes it back.
Well, I think he's in Kentucky now, so
yeah. So I'm not sure that all of that's going to come back. I'm a little concerned for the trophy or the guns won.
Oh man. Well,
yeah.
I guess we'll wait around a little bit to find out. But yeah, man, I guess we got a couple weeks before we go back racing, or probably 3 weeks before we go back racing at National Enduro. But I appreciate your time for coming and joining us. Huge congratulations on the win, dude. I was checking out the scores throughout the day and was stoked to see you come back and get that win, especially after everything you went through. So congratulations on getting it done, and thanks for chatting with us. And I'm sure that's got to be a good closing to your weekend.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully we can make some more changes and make sure that we're ready to go for Ohio. Ohio treated me okay last year, but could have been better, and we got to make sure that we're ready to go here in the next few weeks for the next Enduro. See if I can't beat the kid.
There you go. Well, good luck there, and we'll talk to you later on, and thanks again, man.
All right, thank you. Talk to you later.
See ya.